topic that often comes up in this podcast, and I'd love to get your view on it, and that is the need to educate flat buyers and flat owners, or people buying property that has common areas, of what their responsibilities are and what the role of the factor is. Do you agree with that? And if so, what do you think about it?
I'm not sure educate's the right word. I think making people aware of the responsibilities, but that, comes probably way before they've even bought the property.
Yeah.
And there has been changes afoot over the past few years where, historically you would see people coming in, they had no idea who the factor was or that they even had a factor. Then, the first thing is maybe a notification of an introductory letter, which, certainly we do, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. And you would get a phone call saying, who are you and what are you talking about? So it has to start probably way before, in terms of, don't think your obligations in terms of a property is just your mortgage and your council tax. You have to be thinking, you have to budget. That's the big thing. Because, certainly with the world's going at the moment, and, cost of living and so on, and there's not a lot of spare funds for people. Before making such a commitment to a property, you have to be aware of, a wee bit further down the line, you could be looking at additional maintenance costs, which could be, something even just like redecorating the property to something a bit more significant. If we do need to look at a new roof, if there is going to be, major stonework repairs, you have to budget for that. You have to look ahead. There's been something that's been kicking about, property management for a whole number of years in terms of looking at, I think, building MOT is essentially what we've always been trying to, and PMAS have been banging that drum for a number of years. I think the penny's dropping a lot of places, and it might be something we see where people need to be thinking ahead. You do it for your cars, you do it for other things where you're proactive about it. So it should be something, let's look at my property. What am I going to have to be considering here in 3, 5, 10 years' time?
Yeah. No, I get you. Actually, we interviewed Annie Flint on here a number of months ago.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she said was that she wanted to see the home report actually grow a bit more to actually talk about the common areas, because that's the now, whether you agree with that or don't agree with that, it would certainly mean that homeowners got a view of something other than that square in the building that they're actually buying.
Yeah, because they don't. I mean, that's the thing. You don't just buy if you're in common property. You don't just buy it like you say the box inverted commas that you're living in. It is your staircase, it's your roof, it's your gardens, and there could be areas you don't even see. Particularly with modern housing developments, most now will have play areas in them. Yeah, and it could be quite a distance away from where your property is. You might not have kids, you might not ever have to use it, but you have a liability towards it, and you have a liability to maintain it and ultimately pay for it. So I think it's one of these things where it's probably slowly changing a wee bit. I think I would really like it to move a lot faster, because it would make things a lot easier for people, because there is a point where people are coming in and they just don't realise what they've committed to. And that can be a real problem.
Yeah, I think the one that I think catches a lot of people out that I didn't mention that well, maybe slightly, is the downsizers. The people who have owned a 5-bed house in a street or whatever size house in the street for 30 years. The street was adopted by the council. They don't even know what a property factor is. And then they move into a development. They bought another house. They moved into a development. And then suddenly there's a factor who's then, because it's not adopted, and the factor needs to look after the grass. I think these guys, I was having a conversation with someone, I can't remember who it was and where it was, but it was a person in industry. I think she maybe was an accountant or something like that, and I mentioned what I did for a living, and said to me that, I've been paying this company for years, and then some work needed done, and they asked me to pay for it, and it's like, it's not a charity, you know what I mean? So I do think that there's there's definite, I mean, whether you call it educational awareness, there's definitely a need for people to understand more what happens, and that, you're right, that needs to happen them actually signing missives. They need to understand what they're getting themselves into.
And it's something that, particularly in Glasgow, and I remember having a conversation with David Doran and David Reid about it. I think we were part of a focus group or something, but looking at the sort of tenement stock in the city, where Glasgow has so many stunning buildings, absolutely phenomenal architecture, historic buildings throughout the city, and a lot of them are being allowed to deteriorate for probably a lack of funding, maybe not a lack of will, but if you're approaching a group of homeowners and asking for a significant sum of money, it can take a while. And in the meantime, obviously the building is is deteriorating. Good. Obviously, we have a really great relationship with Glasgow City Council. Their sort of funding schemes are fantastic, but it's not a infinite pot of money. So these things, we have to look ahead in these things and think, what is this city going to be like in 5, 10, 20 years time? And how do we look at maybe stopping that rot, so that these buildings don't get to the point where the cost of maintaining is just out with the reach of your normal homeowner. No,
you're right. I actually just one more thing before we get on to Jackson's 3 quirky questions, which I'm really looking forward to, by the way. And I always remember when I was looking for a flat with Sarah, who and we walked up to the front of a building, and she's obviously she's a commercial property manager, but or by trade anyway. She doesn't do that anymore, but and we were standing outside this flat looking at this building, and I was like, oh, it's a cracking looking building. And she looked at the top and said, there's 3 trees growing out of the gutters at this building. So it's an instant kind of red flag as to how is that building being looked after? Is that building not being looked after? And something, I would never even have thought about it. I'd never even have thought about it. And we walked away from it actually, and I've heard since that there's from people who we knew living there that there's been there was neglect of that building, and if you just spend the money when you're as you're going, it's far cheaper in the long run than the bill to repair the deterioration.
It's like prevention. Better than cure, and that's the thing where. And we do that. Obviously, you've had the benefit of having Sarah's eye on that. Although, considering you've worked with this industry for nearly 30 years, I'm disappointed you didn't notice a tree in the gutter. But we do that, and it's just habit. And I'm sure every property manager does it, where you're just driving about or walking about, and you just clock things on buildings. It's just force of habit now, I think.
I know what you mean. Right, well, that's been great. Thanks for answering my questions.